Some stories begin with thunder and lightning, others with whispered promises in crowded rooms. But this story begins with the scent of jasmine carried on a warm evening breeze, the kind that makes strangers lock eyes across busy streets and wonder what might have been. It begins with Maya Chen, a travel photographer who had captured sunsets in 43 countries but had never truly watched one until she met Daniel Rivera on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. What happens when two people who have spent their lives running from attachment find themselves unable to move away from each other? What happens when the very thing you fear most becomes the thing you desire above all else? This is not a story about love at first sight. It's a story about love at last sight, about two souls who thought they were too broken for forever, discovering that sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the spaces between fear and hope. In 3 golden moments spanning one unforgettable summer, Maya and Daniel will learn that desire isn't just about wanting someone. It's about choosing them again and again, even when the wind changes direction and the sun threatens to set on everything you've built together. Maya Chen pressed her camera against her chest and breathed in the salt air that danced around the cliff's edge. She had arrived in Carmel 3 days ago, chasing what her editor called authentic coastal magic for the magazine's summer issue. But standing here now, watching the sun paint the Pacific in shades of amber and rose, she felt anything but magical. She felt hollow. 43 countries, hundreds of sunsets, thousands of photographs, and yet she couldn't remember the last time she had simply stood still and watched the day end, without thinking about aperture settings or composition rules. Her life had become a series of moments captured for other people to experience, while she remained safely behind the lens, observing but never truly participating. The warm wind lifted her dark hair as she finally raised her camera, adjusting the focus for what would likely be another technically perfect but emotionally empty shot. Through the viewfinder, she saw him. Daniel Rivera sat on a piece of driftwood about 50 feet away, his guitar resting across his knees, fingers moving silently across the strings as if playing a song only he could hear. His eyes were closed, face tilted toward the setting sun, and Maya found herself lowering her camera without taking the shot. There was something about his stillness that made her own restlessness seem suddenly loud and unnecessary. She watched as he opened his eyes and began to play soft melodies that mixed with the sound of waves below. The music was unlike anything she had heard before. Not quite folk, not quite classical, but something entirely his own. It spoke of longing and contentment all at once, of places left behind and destinations not yet discovered. Maya found herself walking toward him before she realized she had made the decision to move. Her footsteps crunched softly on the dry grass, and when Daniel looked up, she was close enough to see that his eyes were the color of sea glass, green with hints of gray that shifted with the changing light. "I'm sorry," she said, feeling suddenly foolish. "I didn't mean to interrupt. Your music just..." She gestured helplessly toward the ocean, as if the vast expanse of water could somehow explain what his guitar had made her feel. Daniel smiled, and Maya noticed how the expression transformed his entire face, softening the sharp angles of his cheekbones and bringing warmth to those changeable eyes. "No interruption," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't quite place. "Music is meant to be shared. I'm Daniel." "Maya." She shifted her camera bag on her shoulder. "Are you a musician? I mean, professionally?" He laughed, a sound as warm as the evening air. "Not exactly. I teach high school English in San Jose during the school year. Music is just something I do for myself." He gestured to the empty space beside him on the driftwood. "Would you like to sit? The sunset's about to get interesting." Maya hesitated. She had perfected the art of staying in motion, of never lingering long enough in one place or with one person to risk genuine connection. But something about Daniel's easy manner and the way he had offered to share the sunset, not just the physical space, but the experience itself, made her want to break her own rules. She sat down, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body, far enough away to maintain the illusion that this was just a chance encounter between strangers. "What kind of English do you teach?" she asked. "Whatever keeps them awake," Daniel replied, his fingers returning to the guitar strings. "Right now, we're working through poetry, trying to convince 16-year-olds that words can be as powerful as any technology they carry in their pockets." Maya watched his hands move across the instrument with practiced ease. "Do you succeed?" "Sometimes. He played a few bars of something that sounded like sunrise itself. Yesterday, one of my students wrote a poem about her grandmother's hands. She said she never realized that sadness could be beautiful until she read Neruda. Daniel glanced at Maya. What about you? Are you visiting, or do you live around here? Visiting. I'm a photographer. Travel mostly. Maya found herself studying his profile as he looked out toward the ocean. I'm here for work, trying to capture what makes this stretch of coast special. And have you found it? The question was simple, but something in Daniel's tone suggested he was asking about more than just photography. Maya considered lying, giving him the professional answer she always gave when people asked about her work. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. I've been taking pictures of beautiful places for so long that I think I've forgotten how to see them. Everything looks the same through a lens after a while. She paused, surprised by her own honesty. I can tell you the technical requirements for a perfect sunset photograph, but I can't remember the last time I actually watched one without thinking about my equipment. Daniel stopped playing and turned to face her fully. So don't. Don't what? Don't think about your equipment. Don't take any pictures. Just watch. He nodded toward the horizon where the sun hung low and heavy, beginning its final descent toward the water. Let yourself see it instead of capturing it. Maya felt her hands automatically reach for her camera, the gesture so ingrained it happened without conscious thought. But then she stopped, forcing herself to let her hands rest in her lap. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then we'll figure it out together, Daniel said simply. And so they sat in comfortable silence as the sun melted into the Pacific, painting the sky in colors Maya had photographed 100 times but was seeing as if for the first time. The warm wind carried the scent of wildflowers and ocean brine, and Maya became aware of details she usually missed while focused on her camera settings, the way the light turned Daniel's skin golden, the sound of her own breathing mixing with the rhythm of the waves, the feeling of being completely present in a single moment, without any desire to preserve or share it. When the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving behind a sky full of purple and pink clouds, Maya realized she hadn't thought about aperture or shutter speed once. She had simply watched and felt and existed in the space between one breath and the next. Thank you, she said softly. Daniel began to play again, a melody that seemed to capture everything Maya was feeling but couldn't put into words. For what? For reminding me that some things are better experienced than documented. They talked as the stars began to appear, sharing stories that strangers usually kept to themselves. Maya told him about growing up in her grandmother's house in Portland, how she had learned to see the world through her grandmother's stories of places she had never been but somehow knew by heart. Daniel spoke about his childhood in Mexico, the music his father played on Sunday mornings, and the way his mother made every meal feel like a celebration even when money was tight. Why teaching? Maya asked as the moon cast silver paths across the water. Daniel was quiet for a moment, his fingers still moving across the guitar strings. Because I believe in the power of stories to change people. Every book we read, every poem we discover, every piece of music we let into our hearts, it all becomes part of who we are. I wanted to be part of that process, to help kids discover that they have stories worth telling too. And the music? The music is how I tell my own stories when words aren't enough. He played a few notes that sounded like laughter mixed with longing. What about you? What made you want to capture the world instead of just living in it? Maya considered the question, surprised to realize she had never really examined her own motivations. I think I wanted to prove that beauty exists everywhere, even in places that seem ordinary or forgotten. But somewhere along the way, I stopped participating in that beauty and started just documenting it. Maybe that's why you're here, Daniel suggested, to remember how to participate again. They stayed on the cliff until well past midnight, talking and listening to music and sharing a comfortable silence that felt more intimate than any conversation Maya had ever had. When Daniel finally packed up his guitar and they walked back toward town together, Maya felt something shifting inside her chest, a loosening of the carefully constructed walls she had built around her heart. Will you be here tomorrow night? Daniel asked as they reached the main street where their paths would diverge. Maya knew she should say no. She knew that whatever was happening between them was dangerous territory for someone who had made a career out of staying unattached. But looking into Daniel's sea-glass eyes, she found herself nodding. Same time? She asked. Same time, he confirmed, smiling that transformative smile that made Maya's chest tight with something she didn't dare name. As she walked back to her hotel, Maya realized she hadn't taken a single photograph all evening. Her camera had remained safely in its bag, unused and forgotten. For the first time in years, she had experienced a moment without feeling the need to preserve it for later. Instead, she had simply lived it, and in doing so had discovered that some memories are too precious to be captured by anything other than the heart itself. Back in her hotel room, Maya sat by the window and looked out toward the ocean, invisible now in the darkness but somehow still present, still calling. Tomorrow she would see Daniel again, and the thought filled her with equal parts anticipation and terror. She was supposed to leave Carmel in 4 days, return to San Francisco, and then on to her next assignment. But as she fell asleep to the sound of distant waves, Maya found herself wondering what it would be like to stay, to let herself want something more than the perfect shot, to choose participation over observation. In her dreams, she heard guitar music carried on a warm wind, and for once, she didn't reach for her camera to capture the moment. Instead, she simply listened and let herself be changed by the music and the man who made it, note by note, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Maya woke before dawn, her internal clock still attuned to chasing perfect light, even though yesterday had taught her that perfection might not be the point. She dressed quietly and walked to the harbor, thinking she would capture the fishing boats returning with their morning catch. But as she set up her equipment on the pier, her mind kept drifting to Daniel and the way his music had made her feel more alive than any sunrise she had ever photographed. She was adjusting her tripod when she heard his voice behind her. "So this is what you look like when you're working." Maya turned to find Daniel approaching with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that made her forget why she had been worrying about the angle of the morning light. He wore a faded denim jacket over a white t-shirt, and his hair was still damp from what she assumed was a morning shower. "You're up early," Maya said, accepting the coffee gratefully. It was exactly the way she liked it. Strong but not bitter, with just a hint of sweetness. "I'm an early riser, always have been." There's something about the way the world feels before most people wake up, like it's still deciding what kind of day it wants to be. Daniel looked out at the harbor where fishing boats bobbed gently in the calm water. "I come here sometimes to think." "Didn't expect to find you here. Good surprise or bad surprise?" Maya asked, realizing as the words left her mouth that she cared about his answer more than she should. "The best kind," Daniel said simply. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the boats and sipping their coffee as the sky gradually lightened from deep purple to pale gold. Maya found herself studying Daniel's face in the growing light, noting the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, the small scar above his left eyebrow that looked like it had a story behind it. "Tell me about the scar," she said impulsively. Daniel touched his forehead reflexively. "This mountain biking accident when I was 12? I was trying to impress a girl at summer camp by taking a jump that was way beyond my skill level. Ended up impressing her with my ability to bleed dramatically instead." Maya laughed. "Did it work?" She was more interested in the boy who knew how to bandage wounds than the one who caused them. Daniel's eyes met hers. "What about you? Any scars with good stories?" Maya extended her left hand, showing him a thin white line across her palm. "Broken camera lens in Morocco. I was so determined to get a shot of a street festival that I ignored the fact that I was using damaged equipment. The lens shattered in my hand, but I got the picture. Was it worth it?" Maya considered the question. At the time, she would have said yes without hesitation. The photograph had won awards, had been featured in galleries, had helped establish her reputation as a photographer, willing to go anywhere and do anything for the perfect shot. But now, looking at the scar while standing next to Daniel in the gentle morning light, she wasn't sure. "I thought so then," she said honestly. "Now I wonder if I was just so afraid of missing the moment that I forgot to actually experience it." Daniel nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. "I used to do that with music. Get so focused on playing the right notes that I forgot to feel the song. It took me a long time to learn that technical perfection and emotional truth aren't the same thing." "How did you learn?" "My father died when I was 22, Daniel said quietly. "I was in graduate school, studying music theory, spending all my time analyzing chord progressions and compositional techniques. After the funeral, I couldn't play anything that felt real. Every song I tried sounded hollow, technically correct, but emotionally empty. So I stopped playing for a while." Maya felt her chest tighten with sympathy. "How long?" "Almost 2 years. And then, one day I was cleaning out his things and I found this old guitar in the back of his closet. It was beaten up, missing strings, Nothing like the expensive instruments I had been using in school. But when I held it, I could almost hear the songs he used to play when I was little. So I fixed it up, learned to play his songs, and somewhere in that process I remembered that music is supposed to make you feel something, not just impress people with your technique. Maya watched a seagull land on the pier nearby, studying them with bright, curious eyes. Is that the guitar you had yesterday? The same one. I'd never found another instrument that lets me express what I really want to say. Daniel paused. That's probably why I became a teacher instead of a performer. In the classroom, I can help kids discover their own voices instead of worrying about whether my voice is good enough for strangers. Something in his words resonated deep in Maya's chest. She thought about all the photographs she had taken for magazines and galleries, images crafted to appeal to editors and critics rather than to express what she truly wanted to capture. When was the last time she had taken a picture simply because it moved her? Do you ever regret it? She asked, not pursuing music professionally. Daniel smiled, but there was a thoughtfulness in his expression that hadn't been there before. Sometimes I wonder what might have been. But then I remember that happiness isn't always about following the obvious path. Sometimes it's about finding meaning in unexpected places. He looked at Maya intently. What about you? Do you regret choosing photography? I don't regret photography, Maya said slowly, but I think I regret what I've let it become. I started because I wanted to show people the beauty that exists in ordinary moments. Somewhere along the way, it became about creating beauty that would sell, that would impress, that would advance my career. I lost track of the original intention. A fishing boat had returned and was unloading its catch nearby. Maya watched the fishermen work, their movements efficient and practiced, clearly born of years of repetition. She found herself reaching for her camera without thinking, then stopped. Go ahead, Daniel said gently. Take the picture. But take it because it means something to you, not because someone else might want to see it. Maya looked through her viewfinder and saw something she had been missing in her work for months. The fishermen weren't just working, they were participating in something ancient and essential, connecting themselves to the ocean and to each other through rituals as old as humanity itself. She adjusted her settings not for technical perfection, but to capture the weight of the moment, the dignity in their movements, the way the morning light transformed ordinary work into something sacred. The shutter clicked once, twice. Then Maya lowered her camera and simply watched, letting herself absorb what she was seeing instead of trying to capture all of it. Better? Daniel asked. Better? Maya confirmed. Thank you. They walked along the harbor as the town began to wake up, stopping at a small cafe for breakfast. Over eggs and fresh fruit, Maya found herself telling Daniel things she had never shared with anyone. About the loneliness of constant travel, about the way success had somehow made her feel more isolated than failure ever had, about the growing sense that she was documenting life instead of living it. Daniel listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that helped Maya understand her own feelings more clearly. In return, she learned about his students, about the poetry that made him cry, about his dream of someday writing a book that would help people understand that literature and music weren't separate from life but were life itself, distilled and refined, and offered back to the world as gift. Can I ask you something? Maya said as they finished their meal. Anything? Yesterday, when you invited me to sit with you, did you know what was happening? I mean, did you feel something shifting between us? Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. I felt something, he admitted, but I wasn't sure what it was. I've been single for 2 years, focused on work, on music, on finding my own rhythm. After ending a relationship that never quite fit, I wasn't looking for anyone. Neither was I, Maya said softly. I've made a career out of staying unattached. It's easier to leave places when you haven't left your heart behind. And now? Maya felt her breath catch. The question hung in the air between them like a challenge, like an invitation, like a door opening onto a room she wasn't sure she was brave enough to enter. Now I'm terrified, she said honestly, and I don't want to leave anymore. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing gently across the scar on her palm. I'm terrified too, but maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe fear just means we're taking something seriously for the first time in a long while. They spent the rest of the day exploring Carmel together, but it felt different from any tourist adventure Maya had ever experienced. Instead of rushing from location to location, checking items off a list, they moved slowly, allowing themselves to be drawn by curiosity rather than obligation. They browsed bookstores and art galleries, sat in hidden courtyards, shared ice cream while watching street performers. Maya took pictures throughout the day, but sparingly, and always with intention. A child feeding seagulls, her face bright with delight. An elderly couple sharing a bench, their hands intertwined after what must have been decades of practice. Daniel himself, caught in a moment of pure joy as he discovered a first edition of Neruda's poetry in a used bookstore. Each photograph felt different from anything Maya had created in months. They weren't perfect technically. Some were slightly overexposed, others composed in ways that would make her editor cringe. But they captured something real, something true, something that mattered more than professional polish. As afternoon melted into evening, they found themselves back at the cliff where they had met, settling onto their piece of driftwood, as if it had been reserved for them. Daniel played while Maya watched the sunset, but this time she allowed herself to truly see it, not as a potential photograph, but as a moment that belonged to them alone. "I changed my flight," Maya said suddenly, the words escaping before she could second-guess them. Daniel's fingers stilled on the guitar strings. "What?" "I was supposed to leave tomorrow. I changed it to next week." Maya felt her heart racing but pushed forward. "I want to stay. I want to see what happens if I give us, a real chance instead of running away like I always do." Daniel set his guitar aside and turned to face her fully. "Are you sure?" "I don't want you to change your life for me if you're not ready." "I'm not changing my life for you," Maya said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. "I'm changing it for me. For the first time in years, I'm choosing to stay somewhere because I want to, not because I have to. Because being here with you has reminded me what it feels like to be present in my own life." Daniel's smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and transformative. "In that case," he said, "I know exactly how we should spend your extra week." As the stars emerged overhead, Maya felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness she had never experienced before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about what she was doing and where it might lead. But tonight, surrounded by the sound of waves and the warmth of Daniel's presence beside her, Maya allowed herself to believe that sometimes the most important journeys begin not when you decide where you're going, but when you choose to stop running from where you are. The warm wind carried the scent of jasmine and possibility, and for the first time in her adult life, Maya Chen was exactly where she wanted to be. 6 days had passed since Maya decided to stay, and the world had somehow become both larger and smaller at the same time. Larger because every conversation with Daniel opened new territories of thought and feeling she hadn't known existed. Smaller because her entire universe had narrowed to the space between his smile and the sound of his laughter, to the way his hand felt in hers as they walked along the beach, to the music he played just for her in the evenings. But now, standing in her hotel room with her camera equipment spread across the bed, Maya felt the familiar weight of decision pressing against her chest. Her editor had called that morning with an offer. 3 months in Southeast Asia, shooting for a feature series on hidden temples and forgotten villages. It was exactly the kind of assignment she had built her career on, the type of opportunity that other photographers would kill for. A week ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now, she stared at her reflection in the hotel mirror and hardly recognized herself. Her face had lost the constant tension she had carried for years, the tight expression of someone always thinking 3 destinations ahead. Her eyes looked different too, clearer, more present, like she was finally looking at the world from inside her own life instead of from behind a camera lens. Daniel would be picking her up in an hour for what they had planned as their final evening together before her extended week came to an end. She still hadn't told him about the phone call, hadn't mentioned that she now faced a choice between the career she had spent years building and the possibility of something she couldn't even name yet. The knock on her door came exactly when expected. Daniel stood in the hallway with his guitar case slung over his shoulder and a wildflower tucked behind his ear, a white poppy he must have picked from the fields they had walked through yesterday. The sight of him made Maya's chest tight with an emotion too complex to untangle. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked, his sea-glass eyes bright with anticipation. Maya grabbed her camera bag, then hesitated. "Actually, do you mind if I leave this here tonight? I want to be completely present for whatever you have planned." Daniel's smile was answer enough. They drove north along the coast in Daniel's old Jeep, windows down, salt air whipping through their hair as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Maya had no idea where they were going, but she found herself not caring about the destination for once in her life. The journey itself was enough. The music playing from the radio, Daniel's hand warm on her knee, the feeling of moving through the landscape instead of trying to capture it. After 20 minutes, Daniel turned onto a dirt road that Maya hadn't noticed in all her explorations of the area. The path wound upward through cypress trees and wild grass until they reached a meadow perched high above the ocean, completely hidden from the main highway. "How did you find this place?" Maya asked as they climbed out of the Jeep. "My first year teaching, I was going through a rough patch. New job, new town, missing home more than I wanted to admit. I started driving random roads on weekends, looking for somewhere I could play music without bothering anyone. Found this meadow by accident and it became my refuge." Daniel pulled a blanket from the back of the Jeep. "I've never brought anyone here before." The meadow was breathtaking, a circular clearing surrounded by trees, with wildflowers scattered through the grass like paint spatters on a canvas. But what made Maya's breath catch was the view beyond the trees. The entire Pacific Ocean stretched out below them, endless and blue-green and alive with reflected light from the setting sun. They spread the blanket in the center of the meadow, and Daniel immediately reached for his guitar. But instead of playing, he held it out to Maya. "I want to teach you something," he said. Maya shook her head. "I don't play music. I wouldn't even know where to start." "That's perfect. Starting from nothing means you can't do it wrong." Daniel positioned the guitar in Maya's lap, showing her where to place her fingers, how to hold the neck. Music isn't about being perfect. It's about expressing what words can't say. Under Daniel's patient guidance, Maya learned to press down on the strings, to strum slowly and carefully. The sounds she made were far from beautiful, halting, sometimes discordant, occasionally surprising in their accidental harmony. But there was something magical about feeling the vibration of the strings beneath her fingers, about creating sound from nothing but intention and touch. "Now try this," Daniel said, repositioning her fingers to form a simple chord. "This is G major. Press down firmly and strum." The sound that emerged was clean and pure, and Maya felt a thrill of accomplishment that reminded her of the first time she had developed a photograph in a dark room, watching an image slowly emerge from chemicals and light. "I did that," she said, grinning at Daniel. "You did that?" he confirmed. "Now try D major." They spent an hour working on basic chords, Maya's fingers growing more confident with each attempt. Daniel was an excellent teacher, patient and encouraging, breaking complex concepts into manageable pieces, celebrating each small victory. When Maya finally managed to transition smoothly between G and D, Daniel whooped with genuine excitement. "You're a natural," he said, and Maya felt a flush of pride that had nothing to do with professional recognition or external validation. This was different, personal, intimate, about becoming rather than achieving. As the sun sank lower, Daniel took the guitar back and played while Maya listened, but now she heard the music differently. Having felt the strings beneath her own fingers, having struggled to make even simple sounds, she had a new appreciation for the complexity and beauty of what Daniel created so effortlessly. Each note meant something now, carried weight and intention she hadn't understood before. "Daniel," Maya said during a pause between songs, "I need to tell you something." He set the guitar aside, giving her his full attention. "What is it?" Maya took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing at the edge of a cliff much higher than the one where they had met. "My editor called today. She offered me an assignment in Southeast Asia. 3 months, maybe longer. It's the kind of opportunity I've been working toward my whole career." Daniel's face remained carefully neutral, but Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or resignation. "That's amazing," he said quietly. "Congratulations. I haven't said yes yet." "Why not?" The question hung between them, like a bridge Maya wasn't sure she was brave enough to cross. She thought about all the reasons she should take the assignment. The professional advancement, the financial security, the chance to add prestigious credits to her portfolio. But when she tried to imagine herself in temples and villages on the other side of the world, all she could think about was what she would be leaving behind. "Because for the first time in my adult life, I'm not sure that professional success is the most important thing," Maya said slowly. "Being here with you has made me realize that I've been living my life in pieces, beautiful, carefully composed pieces that look perfect from a distance but don't actually connect to anything real." Daniel reached for her hand. "Maya, I would never ask you to choose between me and your career. We've only known each other for a week. It's not about choosing between you and my career," Maya said, surprised by the clarity in her own voice. It's about choosing between the career I thought I wanted and the life I actually want. They're not the same thing. The sun had reached the horizon now, painting the meadow in golden light that made everything look like a dream. Maya felt the familiar urge to photograph the moment, but for once, the urge felt like a distraction rather than an instinct. This moment was too important to view through a lens. "What do you want?" Daniel asked softly. Maya looked around the meadow, at the wildflowers nodding in the warm breeze, at the ocean stretching endlessly toward tomorrow, at Daniel's face open and hopeful and patient. She thought about the week they had shared, the way he had taught her to see sunsets instead of photographing them, the way her heart had learned to beat in rhythm with something larger than ambition. "I want to stay," she said, "not just for another week or month, but really stay. I want to find a way to do work that matters to me, instead of just work that advances my career. I want to learn more guitar chords and take pictures that tell true stories, and wake up knowing that I'm exactly where I belong." Daniel's smile was like sunrise, transformative and impossible to resist. "Are you sure? Because once you say something like that out loud, it becomes real." "I want it to be real," Maya said. "I want us to be real." As if summoned by her words, the warm wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine and ocean and possibility. Daniel leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sure and perfect, while the sun painted everything gold around them. Maya felt something fundamental shift in her chest, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place after years of trying to force the wrong shapes together. When they broke apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "So what happens now?" Maya laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I have no idea. I've never done this before. Chosen happiness over achievement. Chosen present over future. Chosen love over safety. We'll figure it out together," Daniel said, echoing his words from that first night on the cliff. They stayed in the meadow until the stars appeared, talking about practical things, how Maya might transition from travel photography to local work, where she might live, what it would mean to build a life in one place after years of constant motion. But underneath the practical conversations was something deeper, the recognition that they were choosing each other, choosing the unknown territory of partnership over the familiar landscape of solitude. "I'm scared," Maya admitted as they packed up the blanket. "Good," Daniel said. "I'm scared too. But I've learned that being scared of something usually means it's worth doing." On the drive back to town, Maya felt her phone buzz with a text from her editor asking for a decision on the Asia assignment. Instead of feeling the familiar panic of a deadline approaching, Maya felt calm. She would call tomorrow and politely decline, would begin the process of figuring out what came next. But tonight, driving through the darkness with Daniel's hand in hers and the sound of his humming mixing with the ocean breeze, Maya knew she had made the right choice. She had spent years capturing beautiful moments for other people to experience. Now she was ready to create beautiful moments for herself, to live inside her own life instead of observing it from a careful distance. When Daniel walked her to her hotel room door, they kissed goodbye like people who knew they would see each other again, like people who had decided to build something together rather than just enjoy a brief encounter. "Sweet dreams," Daniel said, tucking the white poppy behind Maya's ear. As Maya fell asleep that night, she could hear faint music drifting through her window. Daniel, sitting somewhere under the stars, playing the songs that had brought them together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about how to merge two lives that had been carefully constructed around independence. But tonight, surrounded by the scent of jasmine and the promise of mornings yet to come, Maya Chen was exactly where she wanted to be, poised at the beginning of a story she would finally allow herself to live instead of merely document. The warm wind carried possibilities through the open window, and Maya smiled in her sleep, dreaming of guitar lessons and sunset walks, and the way home could be a person rather than a place, if you were brave enough to let it be.